Jackson, KNXX, Donaldsonville, and WDGL HD2 Baton Rouge. This hour brought to you by Spencer Callahan Injury Lawyers, LA 21-12681. Offices in Baton Rouge. Hanny time. Hanny time. A daily look at sports from our resident historian. Your sports break during your lunch break. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. Here's Charles Hannegriff.
And we welcome you into another edition of Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Charles Hannegriff, Mario Jerez, Taylor Sharp with you. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. Did you get enough to eat? Like 9 different plates. By the time we got to Sunday, it was just like, I just want anything other than leftovers. But it's like that every year, so that's okay. Hope you enjoyed it with your family and friends. There was a ton of entertaining football. If you didn't have fun as a college football fan on Saturday, right up to the point where LSU lost, of course, then you just weren't trying real hard because we had big games that lived up. We had some real stunning upsets. A lot of coaching news. Nebraska hiring Matt Rule. Arizona State's got a new head coach. Auburn does not, which is a whole different story. We'll get into all that. But, of course, we start with LSU's disappointing 38-23 loss over in College Station. Most of the week, we were kind of the opinion that you would get one of two A&M teams, one that was highly motivated, one that was ready to play and would take this opportunity to, kind of get in LSU's season a little bit, but also to have it be their bowl game, to go into the offseason with some type of momentum. Or the A&M team that looked largely disinterested a week ago against UMass in an empty stadium, and with a bowl game past this game out of reach, would they just play out the string? It was very evident from the opening drive of the game that it was going to be the former, that Jimbo Fisher, who has been ridiculed, lampooned, whatever you want to call it, through most of the season, had his team ready to play. And whether you like Jimbo or not, we of the opinion he's not as bad a coach as his record was. We asked the question, I think I asked it 10 different ways on pregame for everybody we had, what has happened? And the explanations range from Jimbo's running an antiquated offense, looked plenty modern enough to me last week, to injuries on the offensive line, to uncertainty at quarterback. Take your pick. Another theory that was floated by Richard Dixon, who did the postgame with us on Fridays, is that there were some people that had declared for the transfer portal even before this game. There were some that they knew were going to be out as soon as this game was over. But if there was a culture problem in the locker room, the possibility was there that the culture problem was confined to a handful of kids, and that the addition by subtraction to your culture was them moving along. I don't know if that was it. Whatever it was, they came to play. And the most disturbing thing about the loss was how well they were able to muscle LSU up front. And that was on really the offensive line against LSU's defensive front. They A-Chain ran for 215 yards. A&M ran for 272 yards on the day and over 400 yards of total offense. And they really were, I thought, with the exception of the first, say, 6 minutes or so of the third quarter, in control. It felt like A&M had control of the game. Not that they ran away and hid. LSU's offense in the first half did a nice job. They had the ball 4 times. They scored a touchdown. They kicked a field goal. The other 2 drives reached midfield and came to an end largely because of drop passes. Then in the second half, when LSU, came out, got the 3 and out, went on the touchdown drive, get the ball back on another 3 and out, and then the play of the game, which was the 3rd and 1, where Jaden Daniels puts the ball on the ground. It's a zone read. He's probably got the first down as a minimum if he hands the ball to John Emery. And there was a chance that Emery had enough daylight that he could have gone for considerably more yardage. I'm not gonna tell you he would have scored. I'm not gonna tell you he would have ripped off a 40-yard run. But the first down was there. Daniels has made way more good decisions on these zone reads and these RPOs than he has bad ones. But this one was a mistake, and A&M had the perfect defense called. The stunt on the outside, the fumble and return for a touchdown completely swung the momentum of the game, and from there, A&M really never gave it back. So it's fair to wonder if at 12 games, LSU's defensive front has had their starters, I would say, playing, particularly the defensive tackle position, I would say somewhere between 80 and 90% of the snaps. Hasn't been a lot of rotation up front. Some of that's due to some injuries, and some of that's due, hey, these guys are playing at a high level. But anybody can get tired. And DeQuillen Roy had a really good game the other night. He had 12 tackles, which for an interior defensive lineman is really, really strong. But you have to wonder, as they got into the fourth quarter, LSU all season has been in impeccable condition. Did that group up front finally get tired? And it would be understandable if they did. So that was concerning, obviously. LSU had to juggle some personnel in the secondary with Jarek Bernard-Converse out. And here's where you got to give A&M credit for just making some plays. Moose Muhammad made two of the best catches, that we've seen, over the weekend, two of the best catches. One of them for a touch. Sage Ryan is in position, but Muhammad makes a play on the ball, and they get the touchdown. There was another key reception that he had in the fourth quarter as well, which was a really difficult catch where the coverage is not bad. But the fact remains that A&M was able to keep the ball so long against an LSU defense. Well, here's the thing. A&M came in last in the league in scoring offense and second in total offense, second to last in total offense. LSU came in fourth in the league in scoring defense and fifth in total defense, and yet A&M was able to hold the ball on long, sustained drives 5 different times. A 15-play drive for 90 yards, a 12-play drive for 59 yards, a 7-play drive for 72, 8 plays, 77 yards, 8 plays, 83 yards. That is not the type of offensive production that you would think LSU would give up. It was also fair to think that Matt House would make adjustments, as he has all season. He's had a terrific year, and going into the beginning of the third quarter, I thought he had that, or maybe they just played it a little bit better. Maybe they didn't change anything drastically, but they got the 2 3-and-outs, and that would have put them back in position. If they go down and score on that second drive and take the lead, do they win? Who can say? But it certainly would have, it would have looked pretty good for them at that point that they had kind of righted the ship. Instead, the momentum all swung to Texas A&M, and LSU was unable to get it back. Compounding the problem was later in the game, Jaden Daniels took some pretty big shots, and that had him in a walking boot yesterday, and will be in that boot today. We'll get an update from Brian Kelly during the press conference, but here's what he had to say yesterday about the status of Jaden Daniels' ankle.
Jaden, we kept him in a boot for today. We'll get him out of the boot yesterday, but his exam was good today, and we're pretty optimistic about his ability to practice on Tuesday. So it wasn't a high ankle sprain. Those are the things that you concern yourself with, because that's going to limit his mobility, and he's going to need to have, obviously, all of his mobility and more. And early indications look pretty good. So we'll have a better understanding tomorrow, but the report was good today, and we'll take it from there. Josh looked good. We're obviously very conservative with him in making sure that we got him at what we considered full 100%. He's the kind of runner that needs that, and I think we feel all very good that he's going to be able to be part of the game plan this weekend.
as if this wasn't going to be hard enough. Your top two ball carriers are at least somewhat compromised going into the week, and hopefully they will have a good week of practice and get healthy and ready to go. So this was in no way was this game on any one play or one person. The fumble was huge, but A&M was able to convert on 10 of 15 on third down, throwing a fourth down, so that's 11 of 16 conversions. They were able to run the ball for 272 yards. They got stops when they needed to get stops on LSU's offense. They certainly hit Daniels enough times to make him feel it. Game plan wise, they did a good job of getting Harold Perkins away from the football. LSU saw this earlier in the year when Tennessee did it, and it kind of takes him away from the action. At that time, they were getting him off the field altogether. Well, you can certainly see where teams are trying to get him into a position where he is more in coverage than he is able to rush. And with some of the sets that they were doing, Perkins was pretty far away from the action, and he didn't have much of an impact in this game. Expect to see that again this week by Georgia. This will be something that Matt House has got to put in to make sure that Perkins can impact the game, knowing that if it works against a guy like that, then he's going to see it again, because he's a huge key to what LSU does defensively. And Stetson Bennett, I think, is probably a better athlete than he's given credit for. A lot of the success of the Georgia offense comes when Bennett is on the move. It's not a lot of designed runs, but he is very good at buying himself some time, and he will run it when he has to. And he's tough, and he's not afraid to stick his nose in there. He's not afraid to try and throw a ball on the run and fit it into a tight window. So Perkins getting after him is a big get for LSU this Saturday if they're going to have some success against Georgia. So the game was a bummer, but it doesn't mean that this hasn't been, over the course of the regular season, a fantastic run for LSU. They're ahead of they're ahead of schedule in the rebuild. Brian Kelly's had an outstanding year, and this was not their night. This was not a game that was decided on a official's call. It wasn't a game where I thought LSU got out schemed. I didn't even think they came out flat. A&M just beat them. A&M had a day. They had their best day of the year by far. Some days you go out there and every ball finds a fairway and every putt finds a cup, and instead of lipping out, it drops in. You have some of those days. This was that day for Texas A&M. Didn't think LSU played terribly, but they didn't play well enough. They didn't play well enough to win. And Kelly talked about that after the game, saying, "Listen, they know what happened." And I had missed it on Friday, on Wednesday. He had come out and said, "You know what? Tuesday didn't have a great practice. A little bit better on Wednesday, almost like he maybe kind of saw this coming." And sometimes success is harder to deal with than failure. Anybody reasonable would have taken 9-3 at the beginning of the season in a heartbeat. If you wouldn't have taken it before the season started, you definitely would have taken it after the Florida State game. A 9-3 season without a trip to the SEC championship game would have been a huge success. Say, instead of the way that it ended, they would have beaten Texas A&M and lost to Alabama, and Alabama would have gone to the SEC championship game. This season would have still been considered a success. So the fact that it ended on a sour note doesn't, in my mind, detract from what has been a successful season. And I'll believe that even if they don't win the game on Saturday, which of course they're a huge underdog to do. I'm curious to see, what this will be the theme all week is, what are you going to get out of Jaden Daniels? What is his health going to look like, and what's his confidence level going to look like? Because after the turnover, it was back to, again, holding the ball way too long. The opportunity to make plays down the field presented itself, and frankly, he just was reluctant to take them. We've seen this happen to him before. When something bad happens, generally he plays a little bit tighter after that. He did it against Arkansas, and I thought in the second half after the turnover, he did it again here. It's been, just ingrained in him that, turnovers are so catastrophic that you just can't even take some chances sometimes. When he's rolling and he's got a lot of confidence, we've seen him play at an exceptionally high level. When something goes sideways, he's tightened up a little bit. It's just that simple. So what is going to happen in the Mercedes-Benz Dome on Saturday? If he gets off to a good start or he gets off to a bad start, may be everything for LSU, because we've seen him play with confidence and we've seen him when he gets rattled a little bit, and there's certainly a difference. But this regular season should have exceeded just about anybody's expectations going in. We got some more stuff from Brian Kelly. We got some stuff from Kirby Smart. Kelly's press conference is coming up, of course, at 11:40. We'll also take a look briefly at the Saints' 13-0 loss. Oh, what was that ugly? 3 shutouts in the NFL all year. The Saints have been involved in 2 of them. One of them, they're on the right side. The other one, they are on the wrong side. And a big weekend in college football that sets up championship week for us here. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
Our friends out at Big Mike's in Denham Springs with their holiday gift cards going on right now. Make fantastic stocking stuffers. If you purchase $30 in gift cards, you get $5 off your next visit. $50 in gift cards will get you $10 off your next visit. And $100 in gift cards will get you $20 off your next visit. So not only are you getting a gift that is definitely going to be used and appreciated, but you're going to get a little bit something extra. Live music every weekend, daily lunch specials, and, of course, happy hour drink prices are in place all day Sunday for the Saints and the NFL. If you're watching the Saints, you might need a cocktail to take the edge off. It hasn't been the prettiest thing. Book your holiday parties right now at Big Mike's, and catering also is available. Big Mike's on Aspen in Denham Springs. We're kind of a big deal.
Our listeners fire up their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Louisiana. It's a place defined by culture, by pride, by passion, by people who do more than love this place. They celebrate it, elevate it, champion it. They are the individuals who embody what makes Louisiana great. The companies that make Louisiana a better place to work and live. The nonprofits leading transformational change in our communities. Champions of Louisiana are all around us, and LWCC is proud to celebrate them because we've always been Louisiana loyal, supporting the workers, the innovators, the change agents of this great place we call home. Who are the champions around you? Together, we can share their stories. Together, we can help our home state thrive. Together, we are Louisiana loyal. Always.
It's no secret. The best oysters in Baton Rouge are at Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar. Enjoy mouth-watering South Louisiana flavor and oysters from all over the country. And don't forget our nightly drink specials. Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar, located in downtown Baton Rouge.
Eli's always been into grilling. It took us a while to see it, but the signs were there.
What are you doing, Eli?
I knew grilling was my thing. I have been talking about it throughout my career.
Happy with the results?
I am. Got the new grill from barbecueguys.com. It performed great.
My advice, as I always told my boys,
Do more of what you're born to do.
Barbecue Guys, for those who were born to grill.
You want cheese on your burger, Pops?
I'll take a little cheese.
There's nothing better than tailgating, but it can be a lot.
Join me, Jimmy, out at Charles Handegriff. Monday, 6 to 8 p.m., we're at Spoken Hub Restaurant on Government Street in Mid-City. We recap the weekend pro and college football. Game time presented by Bet Rivers on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hanegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Playing smart, having a great attention to detail, some of the focus that's necessary. For some reason, those things weren't in place, and we have to play with those traits. And, yeah, we have talent, and our talent has to show as well, but the real success of this team has been the ability to rely on traits and talent, and some of those traits were not there for whatever reason. And our players know it. They took it hard after the game. They care. They really want to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. We can get beat, but we don't want to be beat with not bringing our very best. And so unfortunately, it's one of those lessons to be learned in terms of how you need to prepare each and every week.
Anytime 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly talking about some of the things he saw on film in the loss to A&M. This was, again, what he had talked about on Wednesday, which is the prep. And maybe it was a case of the players having, you beat Alabama. You're just absolutely conditioned to triple your focus the next week so you don't have a letdown spot at Arkansas. You catch a break when the starting quarterback doesn't play, and you get that win. You come out and you're sharp against an outmanned UAB team, and maybe they let their guard down a little bit. It would be understandable. It's not acceptable, but it's understandable. A&M was 1-6. They watched A&M play, if they watched them at all this year, mostly terrible football. I mean, what's the best game that A&M put together before Saturday night? The Arkansas game? Maybe. The Miami game, they play well on defense. The offense couldn't get out of their own way. What else you got? The Alabama game and a loss. They also caught Alabama without their starting quarterback. So LSU, again, it's not acceptable, but you understand, hey, listen, they had watched that team play. They had watched that team kind of stumble around. They had watched them go 1-6 in the Southeastern Conference, after starting the season ranked 6th in the nation, and said, hey, we got this, and found out the hard way. And Kelly, I could almost see the wheel spin in his head going, all right, I'll always have this example as long as I'm coaching here, and anybody that is on this team is on a future team, I'll be able to point back to this and say, this was part of our maturation. This is part of our development. Remember when you didn't take it seriously and a 1-6 team kicked your ass? Okay, don't let that happen again. Georgia had a little bit of I guess it was a little bit of a sloppy open. It was only a one-score game at the half against Georgia Tech. They were a massive favorite in that game, but Georgia, are they as good as they were a year ago? I don't think so. I still think that they're clearly one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the country and the best team in the Southeastern Conference during the regular season by far. But at times you look at them, the Missouri game, the Kentucky game, you look at them and go, okay, they're great. They're supposed to be number 1 in the country. That ranking is well deserved. But there are times that they look a little bit vulnerable, just a little bit vulnerable. And Kirby Smart talking about this in the Southeastern Conference Championship game, the opportunity to get there again this year. Remember, Georgia won the national championship last year. They didn't win the SEC.
I'm, a personal big fan of this championship game and the environment that it creates for our players, the memories, the opportunity to play in venue such as this, and what a great opponent to go against. And Brian Kelly and the job he's done with his team, very familiar with their program, got a lot of respect for their players and the way they play. It's a brand of football that's very physical, and both teams are, I'm sure, looking forward to a great event and a great game.
That could hardly be stacked more against LSU. This game is being played about an hour from Georgia's campus. LSU's had to deal with that before. The game's in Atlanta. That's just how it is, and the University of Georgia's right down the road. That's just how that happens. You make it to the Sugar Bowl, LSU's an hour down the road. Georgia, for the most part, at least what Smart was saying yesterday, is pretty healthy. LSU's going to go in with somewhat of a banged-up quarterback, somewhat of a banged-up running back. Everybody that was on last year's team that's back has the experience of playing in the SEC championship game. LSU, I don't think that there's anybody. Is there anybody left from 19? I think everybody's gone. So the experience factor, the big game factor for these players, not the programs, but for these players, all of that lies with Georgia. The better regular season, that lies with Georgia. The momentum, well, Georgia hadn't lost. LSU's coming off of a pretty ugly defeat. All of that falls on the side of the Georgia Bulldogs. It doesn't mean LSU can't win. 2001, LSU went to the SEC championship game pretty unexpectedly. They got to Atlanta with 3 losses, and they were playing. This is a little bit of a stretch, but I'll tell you, that was a national championship contender in Tennessee. This is obviously a national championship contender in Georgia. Now, the similarities kind of in there. One of the big keys in that game was when Matt Mock came in, Tennessee was ill prepared for a quarterback that was going to run. They were preparing for Rohan Davey, who had been setting LSU records through the air and hadn't run a whole bunch. When Mock went in there, that was a real change of pace, and it gave Tennessee some problems, and LSU was able to get the upset win. I think this is considerably harder. I think there's a bigger gap between this LSU team and Georgia than that LSU team and Tennessee. LSU had seen that Tennessee team earlier in the year. They'd gone up to Knoxville. Tennessee had won that game, but LSU was at least familiar with them, and they pull the upset. For LSU to get an upset here, you're going to have some kind of effort like you had in the Alabama game. And when I say effort, I'm talking mostly about execution. I didn't think that this team didn't play hard the other night. Didn't think that they were flat or disinterested or anything like that. Just thought that they got beat. They got out executed. They got out physicaled at the line of scrimmage, and whether that be fatigue, schematics, or whatever else, that's just where it was on Saturday. Doesn't mean it's going to be there the following Saturday. Can you build on things, or does it flip-flop back and forth? College football, very, very unpredictable. South Carolina never in the history of the program had they beaten 2 top 10 opponents in a row. They did it this week, and not only that, they did it on the road. So and this was a team that got blown out by Florida 2 weeks ago. Blown out by a pretty middle-of-the-road Florida team who lost their last 2. And yet South Carolina came off of that defeat, beat Tennessee last week, and then beat Clemson this week. So things can change in a hurry. They're going to have to, because if they play like they played Saturday, it's not going to be a very fun trip to Atlanta. We'll take a break here. Again, the press conference coming up at 11:40. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
Acura and Infiniti of Baton Rouge. Over the past several years, they've had so many updates to the Acura line. They started in 2021 with the TLX and the TLX Type S. The RDX was refreshed this year in 2022, and now the all-new MDX Type S and Type S Advance, plus the 2023 Integra, the newest and greatest technology and styling. 23 model year has 2 years of maintenance included on the front end. Acura and Infiniti of Baton Rouge, where I've been buying my vehicles for going on 2 decades now. It's a service after the sale. It's a transparency in pricing, and it's the way they treat their customers. You're going to enjoy the experience. Do what we've done at our house. We'll buy your next vehicle from Acura and Infiniti of Baton Rouge.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals. But many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
Oh, hey, what's up? It's Big D and Bubba, 100.7 The Tiger Morning Show. We'd love for you to join us every weekday, 4 a.m. till 9 a.m.
Yeah, everything you want in a show. Country music. We got laughs. We got celebrity in-studio guests. We just need you.
Join us every weekday morning, 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., right where it all started.
That's right. Louisiana's country station, 100.7 The Tiger.
ServiceMaster Elite create clean, disinfected work environments. As a local business, we take pride in serving the New Orleans and Baton Rouge areas. Our cleaning protocols follow CDC and OSHA standards for healthcare settings, offices, senior living, restaurants, and industrial plants. Contact ServiceMaster Elite to get your operation ready for reopening with germ disinfection cleaning. ServiceMaster Elite, the trusted choice in professional cleaning since 1996.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
It's no secret. The best oysters in Baton Rouge are at Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar. Enjoy mouth-watering South Louisiana flavor and oysters from all over the country. And don't forget our nightly drink specials. Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar, located
Semifinals in the Prep Football Playoffs, and we get started Friday night at 6 with Louisiana Prep Preview presented by the Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic. Catholic High and John Curtis kick off at 7, and that's immediately followed by the Lake Urgent Care Total Occupational Medicine Louisiana Prep Scoreboard Show on YouTube, Your View, and 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge is hitting the road for the 2022 SEC Football Championship. Tune in this Friday as we broadcast live from the Big Kahuna in downtown Atlanta from 12 to 6 p.m. And remember, our coverage is presented by Hudco Roofing.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
So, I mean, I'm getting a talent fee from Moscona for doing the show from Atlanta on Friday. We're looking forward to the trip. We'll be at the Big Kahuna, which is about a block away from the Marriott and the Hyatt, which is where a lot of the LSU fans stay. That's where we've set up a number of times in the case. So we're about a block on the other side of the Hyatt and the Marriott. That'll be for the shows on Friday. And on Saturday, pregame will be from SEC Fanfare. It's over in the World Congress Center, adjacent to the Dome. And then for postgame, we'll be back at Big Kahuna. Everybody making the trip, I think, except T-Bob. He's got some flimsy excuse. Wife's having a baby or something. I don't know. Everybody else will be making the trip. T-Bob will be with us in spirit. The SEC Championship always a lot of fun. It's a terrific event. I've turned completely around on it. When it was first announced 30 years ago, I had the same reaction that a lot of the coaches did and a lot of fans did was, man, this is a bad idea to make the SEC play another conference game that could potentially knock them out of the national championship picture. Well, Alabama won the first one, won the national championship. Florida won the national championship a few years later, and that theory went out the window pretty quick. So it's become one of the marquee events on the college calendar every year. It'll be a lot more fun than watching the Saints. Yesterday's game was about as ugly and depressing as you can get. I told you earlier in the show, there's only been 3 shutouts in the NFL this year. This broke a streak of over 300 games in which the Saints had scored. You got to go all the way back to the second year of Jim Haslett that they did not score in a game. 13-0. It really doesn't do a whole lot to talk about how helpless you felt in this game. At no point in this game did I think the Saints were going to win. It's not that they didn't move the ball. There were opportunities for them, but whether it be the 2 Alvin Kamara fumbles, especially the one at the 1-yard line, my goodness, a missed field goal that they had to try because there was a false start when they were going to go for it on 4th down, then they missed a field goal. Next time they get down inside the 5-yard line, they run 4 plays, give it up on downs. Andy Dalton gets sacked. There was no attempt. I say there was no attempt. There was no positivity out of the run game at all. Somebody had posted, I don't know if it was the anniversary of it or what, but Jim Mora's last game when he went just ballistic in the press conference afterwards. It wasn't even a press conference, really. He was just kind of outside the locker room, and we didn't do diddly-poo, didn't make a first down, didn't try to make a first down. That's what it felt like yesterday. And that 10-0 lead at half felt like it was 3 times that. There's nothing on this group that it really scares you. Your best players are offensively, I'm talking about, or they're just kind of there. The plays are not being made on a consistent basis. This is 3 big fumbles for Kamara on the season, a guy that has been really good with his ball security. A lot of the rushing success that they had with Taysom Hill, particularly in the Seattle game, it really hasn't been duplicated. Teams keying in on Hill, tried to throw another pass yesterday, but it's 1 out of every 10 times or whatever. So they become what they never were under Sean Payton, and that's predictable. And they don't have enough talent to just say, there were times where Payton could say, Breeze is going to throw the ball to Colston, or Breeze is going to throw the ball to Jimmy Graham. Breeze is going to throw the ball to Darren Sproles. Go ahead and try and stop it. And they could get away with that. And they had superior game plans, obviously. Now, you got none of that. You don't have a big-time talent at quarterback right now. Your number 1 receiver, Chris Olave, he's having a terrific rookie year. But, the drops are, just passes that were ruled incomplete, call it a drop, whatever. Those things are just killing New Orleans. They don't have much of anything that scares you offensively right now. The defense is hanging in. I don't think they, yesterday the numbers were pretty good. They held San Francisco to under 100 yards rushing. Garoppolo had 221 yards passing, so it's not like they went up and down the field on the defense all day. But there's nothing on this group offensively that puts any type of fear into a defensive coordinator that I can see. Compound that with the problems that you've had on special teams, and just the whole thing is a mess. This is the point. Les East, our friend Les East, wrote a column today. Said this is the end of the golden era for the Saints, and I don't know that this game made me think that. I've thought that this Saints team was pretty bad for at least a month now. That they're not very well coached. There's not a ton of talent. They're not exciting. There's not much there that you can hang your hat on and go, what do we got in the spaceship that's good? Okay, well, I like this, and this. It is finally going to force the organization. They have kicked the can down the curb on a number of things over the years, whether it be quarterback development, salary cap issues, trades in the draft. They have always played for the here and now. It's going to be 5 games from now, when this season comes to an end, it's going to be time to really make some difficult decisions where that roster is concerned. Finally get your salary cap position in place. try and revamp this draft as best you can. If there's some picks coming, some compensatory picks coming from somewhere, and you're going to have to turn the page because what you got there is simply not very good. You're now down in the bottom quarter of the NFL. Press conference, we're back on the other side. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The following is an exclusive presentation of the LSU Sports Radio Network. Welcome in to the Brian Kelly Press Conference, delivered by ASAP, the official mobile ordering partner of LSU Athletics. Download the ASAP app today. Coming up, head coach Brian Kelly discusses the week ahead for LSU Fighting Tiger football. But first, from inside the Capital One LSU Sports Radio Network studios, here are former Tiger Gordy Rush and the voice of your Fighting Tigers, Chris Blair.
The regular season now all in the books. We head to postseason play as we welcome you in to the Brian Kelly Press Conference delivered by ASAP.com. And, of course, it did not end the way anybody wanted in purple and gold. Tough loss on the road last week. Bryan College Station, Texas A&M put it all together. 38-23, the final at Kyle Field. Welcome in. We lead you up to 12 noon. Coach Brian Kelly will take to the podium at the Lawton Room inside Tiger Stadium. As LSU now gets ready to head to postseason mode, headed to the SEC title game in Atlanta, 3 o'clock kickoff, just after 3 o'clock Central Time. LSU against Georgia all time, 18 wins, 13 losses, and 1 tie. They've got a win streak of 2 over the Bulldogs, including the 37-10 SEC title victory back in 2019. This will be the 7th appearance by LSU in the SEC title game, and they are 5-1. All time, including that 2019 win. And by the way, this will be the 5th time, Gordy Rush, it's LSU and Georgia representing the West and the East. But we will start by going back and taking a look at Saturday's game. Early on, just did not feel good. Texas A&M, it was obvious this was their biggest game of the year. It was their Super Bowl. They tried to put everything in it. They had A-Chain back healthy, and they rode the A-Chain train all night long. LSU unable to stop them.
Texas A&M had a great game plan. Jimbo Fisher came in with the idea that he was going to run a lot of power sets. We saw a tight end, a H-back / chipper. Sometimes we saw 2 backs back there. They were going to commit to running the football. Not only that, did a great job of scheming, been putting up some sets that forced Harold Perkins Jr. in his nickel position, outside linebacker position, to be in coverage a lot. By just getting him out with twin receivers, Perkins had to go and cover the inside receiver. He was out of the tackle box, not able to bring pressure and blitz and do the things he likes to do. And with that, the Texas A&M offensive line just had their best game of the season. They've been hurt all season long. A-Chain win for over 200 yards, a dominant performance by Texas A&M offensively.
Yeah, I mean, their playmakers made plays on Saturday night. It starts with A-Chain, 215 yards rushing, a total of 274 for Texas A&M. They came into the game, Gordy, we talked about it a lot during the broadcast, 33%, near the bottom in the SEC in third down conversions. They finished the game at 67%, 10 of 15. LSU's inability to get them off the field, and a lot of that due to the running game, controlling the line of scrimmage, and looking at 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. It was third and short virtually all night.
It's 3rd and short a lot. Wegman did a good job of you coming off of some play action fakes when the running game was going with some half boots. He got in space, was really accurate throwing the football. And then later in the game, Chris, as LSU got desperate and really had to commit some people to stopping the run, they played man-to-man coverage. And how about Moose Muhammad? 2 unbelievable SportsCenter type catches, one for a touchdown, both times over Sage Ryan. And like you said, playmakers started making plays.
Yeah, Muhammad, 5 catches, 94 yards. Evan Stewart, the talented freshman receiver, had a couple of big catches. Again, he was targeted 6 times, 4 receptions, 42 yards. And you look at offensively for LSU, again, for the most part, a four-man rush, and they were dropping back in coverage, which I'm not going to say confused Jaden Daniels, but he just wasn't comfortable. A lot of times, once again, held the football a little too long. He had the ability to get out and run a little bit, but it wasn't, when we talked about the success LSU had over the last previous 5 games, it was about Jaden Daniels running when they wanted to run him, designed runs. We got back, unfortunately, because of the defense of Texas A&M, where he was just having to run to make something out of nothing.
No, absolutely. And look, give A&M some credit. Arkansas, I think, showed a little bit of a recipe on how to best defend Daniels, and you really want to set the edge, and it's a wider front 7 than most teams normally have played LSU, and A&M really duplicated that, and it's almost inviting you to run the football in between the tackles, and we saw LSU had some success doing so. But it also takes away Daniels' ability to get to the edge with that run pass, and made it hard for him. Made it really difficult for him.
What was tough to watch was coming out of the halftime break, going in early third quarter, and Coach Brian Kelly told you walking into the locker room, hey, we got to play better defense. I mean, that really summed it up. Offensively, it felt like they had played well. They needed to play a little bit better. And you get those 2 stops right out of the gate, force the 3 and out on Texas A&M. You're able to score on the first one. Looks like you take a little momentum there. And then a costly turnover with about 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. And while Texas A&M's offense had cooled off a little bit, the defense was on their heels. They scoop and score that 27-yard fumble for the score, and that seemed like it was over. The route was on.
Yeah, it was the changing point in the football game. Coach Kelly, after halftime, was adamant they had to play better defense. As you mentioned, the 2 3 and outs. Offense was running the football with ease. They just got to a 3rd-1 situation. It was a zone read combination, and Coach talked about it a little bit. Daniels should have given the ball to the running back. He didn't. Texas A&M uncharacteristically blitzed on the 3rd one, and the linebacker was in his face, and Jaden just never had a chance to tuck the ball. And after that, it kind of was a return to the first half. A&M got cooking on offense, and their defense was playing inspired, and LSU was just chasing points at that point.
If there was one silver lining in the game, I thought, was the running of John Emery Jr. He came away with 3 rushing touchdowns. He was a hammer inside the red zone, but he looked like he was running more confident, with more power, more aggression. It was good to see him do that. Unfortunately, just not enough to overcome the 38-23 loss.
No, it was good to see Emery return to his form against Alabama. That's what I remember seeing him against Alabama. Of course, he had that big touchdown catch against Alabama. Against UAB, put the ball on the ground twice. It wasn't his evening. It was nice to see him come back, bounce back, and have a great effort against Texas A&M.
All right, we'll put it in the rearview mirror. And, it was interesting listening to Coach Kelly after the game there at Kyle Field. I mean, he's a very analytical guy. He doesn't use a lot of hyperbole. He said we didn't do our jobs, but there's a lot more to go in and break down. So I'm sure over the last 24 hours or so, that's what the staff has done. I'm sure he'll address it in the opening comments coming up, and maybe some questions from the media. And then he's going to turn the attention, because LSU absolutely has to. I made a mention at the end of the radio broadcast Saturday night that Texas A&M scored the most points they'd scored all year, 38 points. The Georgia Bulldogs, who the Tigers will take on this coming Saturday, have scored 38-plus on 7 occasions this year. So they'll get their focus on the Bulldogs, and we'll talk about Georgia as we lead you up to 12 noon as we continue here. Want to remind you, download the ASAP app. Get all of your game day needs delivered right to your door. ASAP, the official mobile ordering partner of LSU Athletics. It's a Brian Kelly press conference delivered by ASAP.com, and we'll be right back after this.
Albertsons is making shopping and saving easier than ever. Check out Albertsons For You in our mobile app, where you can shop for groceries and save weekly with digital coupons all in one place. With Albertsons For You, you can earn rewards points every time you shop and redeem them for free groceries. Brand new Albertsons For You members receive $5 off their next $25 purchase just for signing up. Download the Albertsons app or go to albertsons.com to sign up. Albertsons, fresh food, local flavors.
Support your LSU Tigers with Hancock Whitney, the official bank of LSU Athletics. From game day to the offseason, Hancock Whitney LSU credit and debit cards are a big win for any Tiger fan. Want to get your paws on these cards? Well, apply online or visit HancockWhitney.com/LSU. Hancock Whitney Bank, member FDIC. All accounts subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions may apply.
Roto-Rooter of Baton Rouge are the plumbing experts you've trusted for over 75 years. Roto-Rooter has been the #1 name in plumbing and drain service, and you can rely on Roto-Rooter plumbers for fast, expert service. When the you-know-what hits the fan, visit us online at rotorooterbr.com or call 925-8710. Open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Roto-Rooter Plumbers, 925-8710, and away go troubles down the drain.
Did you know that receiving a degree from a technical college is more popular now than ever before? In addition to being a good choice for graduating seniors, attending a technical college is also recommended for people who want to advance their current career or start a brand new one. ITI Technical College is enrolling right now for its next set of courses. They offer programs from electrical technology to office administration. Classes fill up fast, so visit iticollege.edu to apply today. For a better life, iticollege.edu.
Coach Kelly is just moments away from previewing the week for the Fighting Tigers. This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, delivered by ASAP, the official mobile ordering partner of LSU Athletics. Once again, here are Gordy and Chris.
All right, Coach Kelly talks all the time about you have to bring the energy. So, Gordy, that first segment, I felt like you and I still kind of hung over from Saturday. So let's raise the energy a little bit, but let's talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. Where would you like for me to start? Stetson Bennett, Kenny McIntosh, how about Brock Bowers, maybe that Darnell the Hulk Washington, another huge tight end. You want to talk about their defense? Where do you want to start? Second straight season, they finished the regular season undefeated, and this will be the 5th time Kirby Smart has taken the Bulldogs to Atlanta for a title game. However, he is just 3-1 in his previous, or 1-3, I should say, in his previous trips. But not a lot of weaknesses. I get asked a lot because I spent time in Georgia. Do I think this Georgia team is as good, better, worse than last year's team? And just when I think after like the Missouri game, well, maybe there is some weakness to them, then they come out and play another game. And there's been games where early on, even this past weekend against Georgia Tech, kind of a slow start. Georgia Tech put a great game plan together with their interim coach and went right after Georgia. But eventually just the size and the snap after snap, they wear you down, and suddenly they're up by multiple scores.
Where I'd like to start is, how does a school lose 15 people to the NFL draft? 15 people and come back and go undefeated and #1 in the country. And not only that, you look at them and you don't see a whole lot of transfer portal action. You don't see people coming in. You don't see people leaving. And that's why they have the continuity that most programs do not. And I think that's a large reason why they were so successful this year.
One of the things that jumps off from the game notes going into the championship game, you mentioned the continuity they've had. This senior class for Georgia, now 30, when they got the win over Georgia Tech, now they've moved to 46-5 over their 4 seasons. So, again, you're talking about guys who've been in the program. Obviously, Georgia's going to be able to recruit, and every year since Kirby's been there, they've been in the top 5, top 3, and sometimes top class in the country. But they are staying there. They are developing. Georgia this year in the top 12 in scoring offense and scoring defense. 12th, averaging 38.2 points a game, and they're first in scoring defense. And this one is what stands out, giving up 11 points per contest.
Wow. I mean, they're excellent on defense. They've had a tradition of being fantastic. Obviously, Kirby spent so many years with Nick Saban. Similar, somewhat, and some of the defenses, they're not quite as blitz-happy as Alabama, I think, in their prime. But really, front 7 is what you think about in the modern-day Georgia Bulldog defenses. They've just had guys after guys. Roquan Smith, the linebacker, it goes on and on, the people they've had in that program.
You got to tip your cap to Stetson Bennett, a guy who started at Georgia, not really destined to see any time under or behind center, goes to a junior college, then comes back. He was a walk-on originally at Georgia, comes back with a scholarship after going to Jones College in Mississippi. And then over the last, 2 seasons, he's 26-3 since taking over as a starter, led them to the national championship last season. And one of the things when I watch Stetson Bennett is if you can get pressure, and that's the key phrase, if you can rattle him, make him uncomfortable, which not many teams have been able to do, his accuracy starts to drop. But when he can sit back there and have the weapons, the big tight ends that he goes to, obviously with Bowers, and then the complement of the running game, which Georgia's always going to have, It starts with Stetson Bennett, and it'll be interesting to see how Coach Kelly and company address, just trying to disrupt him. I don't think that you can shut Georgia down. You just got to get them off schedule, make them a little uncomfortable. It's just hard to do.
Physical, dominant running game, offensive line. Again, they throw waves. They've got great numbers up on the offensive line. But it's Bennett off some of the play-action pass game. And then, Chris, if you're able to get some pressure on him, you've got to wrap him up because he's deceivingly athletic. He'll make some plays with his feet and escape, and he's done that numerous times this year. Not quite as efficient as he was a year ago. He had 107 last year, finished 176.7 rating, 150 this year, a little bit less. But again, they've just been crushing folks this year, and it's hard to sit here and overanalyze statistics. He's had a great 2-year run there.
Yeah, just one last one that stands out. In his 29 games as a starter, Stetson Bennett, 64% completion, 7,400 yards, 55 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. I want to go back, and I'm sure Coach Kelly will address it. Somebody's going to ask him about him, surely, how healthy LSU will be. Again, without some key guys on Saturday, hopefully you'll get those guys back, namely Josh Williams, who I think just gives you there's a trust factor there, and he does so much for you, not only in the run game, but also helping in the passing game. And, of course, Jaden Daniels went down twice, had to be helped up. The second time, it was a little more gingerly walk back to the sidelines. He did continue to play, but you want to know how healthy you're going to be going into the title game.
Nothing major, but you've got some guys, some key guys obviously beat up a little bit. Lacey, we saw he I believe at least got shaken up. You would assume maybe they looked at a concussion with him. He can they get that lower ankle sprain? And that's what Coach Kelly said yesterday. Not a high ankle sprain, lower ankle sprain. Had him in a boot yesterday. Hopefully they want to get him back tomorrow, is what Coach said Sunday. That's key because you're going to need Daniels and all of his athletic ability if you're going to have a shot to beat Georgia.
Back to the Bulldogs and how you try to attack them. Early in the game on Saturday, we had a chance sitting around there in beautiful Bryan College Station to sit in the hotel room. And Georgia Tech had the success getting out to the edge, which surprised me a little bit with Georgia's defense. But they stayed away from trying to run right at them. They went to the corners and then used a lot of seam passes, try to spread them out and then come back to the middle of the field. It'll be interesting to see if LSU's got the speed in the run game. Obviously, Daniels does. Who do you have at running back? Because right now it looks like, at least from this past Saturday and even going back to UAB, LSU established the run, but between the tackles with Noah Cain and John Emery Jr.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's what, we go back to what we talked about in the first segment. Defenses are now lining up with a little bit wider front seven, that they're trying to, by alignment, discourage LSU and Jane Daniels from running some of those designed runs. And with that, it opens up the opportunity between the tackles. And if that's there, LSU has to take it. And that's why I think you've seen success. You saw it against Arkansas. You saw it again in Texas A&M, especially in the third quarter. I think LSU started getting 5, 6, 7 yards of punch there. And I assume that Georgia's going to do much of the same. This copycat league, teams have had some success slowing LSU down. I think they'll do some more of the same.
All right, let's go to the Lawton Room. See you, Gordy, in Atlanta. Here's Coach Brian Kelly.
Championship game. Obviously, it's exciting to be able to play for conference championship. We've certainly feel like we've earned the opportunity to be here by the play on the field, and we're excited about the opportunity to represent SEC West and playing the number one team in the country. Georgia's, again, proven themselves to be the best team, and we're excited about that challenge. We know it's going to be a tough challenge, but we're certainly up for this chance to win the SEC. That's what you play it for, and I know our guys are excited about it. Again, it's an outstanding football team. There's so many superlatives. Whether you go on offense and talk about Stetson Bennett, or you go defensively and you talk about some of the biggest defensive linemen and most active linebackers with Johnson and certainly inside with Carter and Beal. This is just a well-coached, consistent football team. But our guys have, had the opportunity to play the best, and this is another opportunity for us to be challenged. And so we're excited about the opportunity. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
First, just to check on Jarek Brenner-Converse, what his status is. And also, this was always kind of a makeshift year at corner. I guess, how would you evaluate it now you're 12 games in on how that group did, a lot of moving around and whatnot?
Well, we're playing for the SEC West Championship. I think that's a pretty good answer to that. But Jarek is he will practice on Tuesday, non-contact. If he gets through that non-contact practice, then he'll be fully cleared. So we're expecting that he'll be back for us. I think our guys have done a really good job. I mean, putting together a secondary when you didn't have one is not where you want to be. And I thought that they've, really hung in there all year. We've used a number of guys at that position to hold it down. And, obviously the latest with Jay Ward playing the corner. And he played really well. So really proud of the fact that we've been able to move new players into those positions and obviously get us to the SEC West Championship.
Coach, right up the middle. Could you give us an update on Jaden? You did yesterday on the teleconference.
Yeah, nothing more.
I'm sorry, could we get it in person just for the TV sake?
Sure, yeah. So the update on how do I start? Can you give me a I got it. Right. Give me that for some plays, too, when you get a chance. So he's been evaluated. He's in a walking boot. We'll keep him in that boot today, and then tomorrow he'll go in for his exam. And really, this is about, strength. He'll go on the Alter G today, so he'll run with no, obviously, force, and keep him conditioned even through today, which is a weight training and film study day. And then tomorrow, he'll go through a manual exam where effectively he's got to be able to get up on his toes. If he's able to do that, then we're ready to go for Tuesday. How'd I do? Good. Thanks.
I have a different type question. So, it's a good problem to have, obviously, but some coaches in the past have said how playing in the championship game makes it difficult with the early signing period, with recruiting and stuff like that. Is it compounded by where the transfer portal is now? And how are you dealing with it? Like I said, again, you want to have this issue, but it's still an issue.
No doubt. There's no question about it. So, our situation is different because, most teams that are not playing in a championship game are out on the road recruiting today, and certainly we're preparing for the game. So, we can't be out recruiting at this point. So you lose that opportunity. But recruits know that we're preparing for a championship game, so you gain that back on the other end. Next week is where it really gets interesting, right? So the transfer portal opens on the 5th. We certainly want to be able to recruit, but we want to obviously set our own roster as well. So it's balancing setting your own roster, evaluating your team, exit interviews, doing those kinds of things. While you're also recruiting and keeping an eye on the portal. So you've got a few balls up in the air next week. And then our guys are in exams. So, it lends itself to where we don't have to be hands-on. We can turn them over to our strength and conditioning staff. It's just a matter of balancing how much time we spend with the guys in terms of one-on-ones so we can set our roster, who's coming back, who wants to go to the NFL, who may want to go in the transfer portal. All those things we have to take care of and set our roster here at LSU, as well as look at the portal, and we got to recruit those that are coming in as mid-years. So 3 balls up in the air at one time next week.
I've been able to ask you this question a lot this year. You've apparently played a lot of teams from the SEC. You played Georgia recently twice.
Yes.
Impressions of playing them when you did in 17 and 19, and then also do you take anything at all from those games for this week?
Not really. I mean, structure defensively is very similar. I mean, certainly the personnel is different, but structure is the same. You know what you're going to get. Offensively, they're a little bit different with Coach Monken. He's got a creative bent to him that's a little bit different than what they had in 17 and 19. But there's similarities there that we take as a crossover more than anything else. And again, this then becomes how do you handle Brock Bowers? How do you handle some of the matchup situations that you have to deal with? The quarterback is totally different, and I think structure is one thing in terms of knowing what the structure looks like, but then you have to game plan against individuals, and I think that's where this becomes a little bit different.
Coach, obviously, you've been around a long time and watched plenty of SEC ball.
Said that
coached
long
against them.
time.
Yeah, long time.
Thank you.
Many years.
Appreciate it.
When you joined the SEC West then and you thought about what it was to go through a year, how does that compare to now? I guess what was the biggest takeaway from being a head coach in the West?
This past weekend, how you have to bring your best each and every week. If you don't bring your best, you'll get beat. And so I think that to me, more than anything else, is the takeaway. You cannot play without the energy and the identity of your football team. There's just too many talented players. And if you're not ready to play and play at your best, you'll get beat. That's the SEC West.
Coach, what would it mean to win the SEC championship, regarded as the top conference in America, especially after what you inherited and the situation you were in a year ago?
Yeah, I think it would be obviously something that we would all feel great about in our first year here at LSU. But I think, overall, it's hard to win SEC championships. It's so hard. I mean, there's so many good teams. We've just talked about how you have to play week to week in the regular season. But to get there and then win it all, it's that's why somebody asked me yesterday about do you think that if they expand the playoffs that an SEC championship would be devalued? And I said, absolutely not. You don't know what you have to go through to actually get here. And that's why I think it would never be devalued, and it would be such a huge thing for this football program.
Brian, down here. You've talked obviously a lot this year about processes, and that's kind of been like the key to your program in general in this season. When did you feel like maybe the players had finally kind of adopted those things and the things that were clicking in terms of I guess off the field processes and all that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I think it's like anything else. When you put in a new way of doing things, new standards, it's like anything in life. You go to a new business or a new operation, there's a new way of doing things. That just takes time. I don't know that we're there yet. I think the first year is really, setting those standards, making sure that they understand. I think we're at that level of, conscious competence. We know what to do. We know how to do it, but it's really hard for us. And we want to get to, where it's unconscious competence. We don't have to think about it. It's just we do it, and we do it the right way every day. And I think it's still a process for us. They understand it a lot better. So I think that's where that level is, but we still have another level to go.
Hey, Coach, right here. You're going up against a 6'7", 270-pound tight end this week. How do you combat that?
Hope they don't throw it to him. Is that what you mean? Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes, we break this game down to, one player against one. You're hoping that in some situations that your zone coverage where you have somebody underneath them over the top. Because really, if you look at it, if it's just a one-on-one situation, he's a pretty, unique athlete, and that he can line up and has lined up at wide receiver. That's not a great matchup for anybody. So, you've got to take some of those things away. You've got to be able to help with underneath coverage, over the top. Sometimes there's bracket situations where, you've got a corner with an inside backer and a safety, and that triangle kind of takes away throwing lanes, because if it's just as simple as one guy versus one guy, that's not a favorable situation. But you may get that sometimes, and you're hoping the pass rush gets there. You're hoping that Stetson can't find him, things of that nature, because it is a matchup issue.
Down here in the front, more big picture for the first year, could you maybe cite a couple of things beyond the coaching staff and managing the roster, just a couple of things that you implemented new to the program this year that in retrospect you think were really effective, you're glad you did? And on the flip side, what was it like to try to decide what not to change? Because obviously it's a very strong program.
Yeah. You never really touch tradition, but you don't worship it, right? You bring tradition along with you. And that is you make sure you're welcoming former letter winners, former players, those that have been, part of building the pride and tradition of LSU. I think that's absolutely crucial, to have guys back that have helped win championships here. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that. So without worshiping it and falling into that kind of, hey, we have to do it this way because it's always been here, but paying attention to those that help build the program, I think that's one way that I think we've done a really good job. And I think the other way is much more, day to day in terms of, we have a thing called SWAT teams where, I think that's standard and setting a standard so our guys knew what the expectations were, and on a day to day, they come into our building and we're not throwing them curveballs. They know exactly what they're getting. It's a consistency every single day, and I think that creates an atmosphere within the building that they can trust. And so I think that those two things in particular, really welcoming our former letter winners back, those that have been instrumental in building this program, without get caught up with, hey, we did it this way, we got to continue to do it this way. And then internally setting up our SWAT teams.
Do you worry again or protect against a letdown after losing the game last week and I guess for all intents and purposes losing a playoff shot?
No. The least concerns I have is a letdown. We didn't play up to our standards, and so our guys know it, and they care about that. And you could sense it and feel it over the last couple of days, from after the game in the locker room to yesterday when they had to be here for meal, even today in the training room. Our guys know they let something slip away, and they're upset about it. And they know how they have to play. I mean, we don't have a margin for error. We have to play with grit. We have to play with fire. We have to play to our identity. And if we don't, we're not the kind of team we need to be. So I think they're anxious to go back out and play up to their standard. And that's the way I feel that they will play.
Could you go into further detail on Stetson Bennett, what you see in him as a winning quarterback, a consistent player?
Yeah, I think when you turn on the film, he just exudes confidence. He's a guy that has mastered the position in what Coach Monken and certainly Coach Smart are asking him to do within that offensive structure. He just, he moves around with confidence. He's only got very few rushes. He's not a guy that's looking to run, though he can run away from you. In the Auburn game, you can see him accelerate and separate from some defenders. But he wants to get the ball to his playmakers. He's just a smart, careful with the football. He just, I think the confidence level that he brings up the level of confidence around him and all the playmakers that he has.
Coach John Emery had a rough game against UAB with the fumbles and then comes out and scores 3 touchdowns for you this week. Can you just talk about, as his head coach, the ups and downs you've had with him and the electric stuff he can bring to a game like this, but also the need to protect the football against a Georgia defense that's probably going to try to rip it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty well chronicled that, our depth at the running back position is not where it needs to be. And so, you've got to be very careful. You got to make sure that John understands that, look, you can't continue to put the ball on the ground, but yet on the other hand, we can't put him on the shelf because he's got to help us. So, I thought he handled himself pretty good. I think Coach Wilson's done a great job of dealing with him in terms of the mental aspect of preparation and how to do this with a concern for holding on the football. But we got to get the best out of him because, as you know, he's a very talented player with the way he played this past week. So it's been a balancing act a little bit. We get Josh back this week, which will help. But I think more than anything else, I think Coach Wilson's done a really good job of balancing that, discipline of carrying the football with, we need you to play big for us as well.
In third year in a row, Georgia's in this game. In what way might that be an advantage for them?
I don't know that it is per se. I think that their team, clearly, has themselves in a mindset that this is where we should be and we expect to be here and we expect to win. And, anytime you face an opponent that's confident and believes they're going to win, you've got to beat that. You've got to go ahead and take that from them. It's like, playing the Alabama teams, those that believe they're going to win football games. We were 1-9 against Alabama, in the last 10 games. They believed that they were going to beat us, and we had to go take it from them. And we'll have to do the same thing, with Georgia. This is a team that believes they should be there, and they should win the SEC championship. So we have to overcome that as well.
Staying on Georgia, just their defense. Obviously, Kirby's done a great job of, building them into what they are consistently as well. What do you see when you look at them on tape?
Well, certainly, physical, the defensive tackles are outstanding. Carter and Beal. I think, look, I think it's pretty clear that what you'll see is the perimeter players not only are athletic, but they're outstanding tacklers. And that doesn't surprise me from, coming from what Kirby does and obviously what he demands from his players. They're tough-minded. They play physical. They play downhill. And they play a 3-down, 4-down, which, we're obviously seeing a lot of it, but, you got to make sure you minimize the negative plays against a defense like this. You could get into some bad plays, and now you're behind the chains. They get you to third down, now there's a lot of things they can do. So first and second down and eliminating negative plays against this defense in particular is really big.
Ryan, you mentioned, running back depth's not where you need to be. A lot of things in the team are not where you need to be, and yet y'all are in this place. Would you have looked at this team from afar if you were looking at this team somewhere else and say, man, that they're not probably going to be able to get there, and yet here you are?
Well, we needed to play. We needed to play to our absolute best when our best was needed, and we did. I'd like to say that for the entire year, but that has not been the case, and a lot of it is we have some work to do in terms of building up the depth of our program and certainly continue to build our process. But I will say that they have given us everything when the lights have come on and their best has been needed. They have given us their best, and you don't know that until you get around a group of guys. In terms of what kind of fight they have. This group has a lot of fight. That's why they'll go to Atlanta and they will fight and they will play hard for 4 quarters and they will give everything they have against a very talented Georgia team.
Brian, you kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday with Todd Monken on the Georgia side. Obviously, y'all go way back to Grand Valley State.
Yep.
There's a lot of kind of connections. I mean, John Jancic on your when your analyst was there last year, and go back to Grand Valley.
Cortez,
exactly. What I guess, how close are you still with some of those people who you started out with at Grand Valley? Obviously, Mike Denbrock's on your staff, but some of the guys who, how did you kind of stay close with them throughout your tenure like that, or your career?
Yeah, Chuck Martin at Miami of Ohio, was on my staff. A lot of those guys. Look, when you come up through the Division II ranks and you have to learn how to do all the laundry as well as hand out meal money and do those kind of things, you build a relationship with all of those coaches that you carry with you through, your entire career. And so, we always stay in contact. John Jancic played for me, those are the kind of things that you never forget when you start in Division II and you don't have the resources. So as those guys kind of ascend and go on to other positions, Todd and I have always stayed in contact. And spent a lot of time when he was at Louisiana Tech. He loves the state of Louisiana. So, I think it's just that connection you have when you're at Division II and, you didn't have the resources that make it special. Good. Thank you.
Coach Brian Kelly with this week's press conference as LSU gets ready to take on the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta. Kickoff just after 3 o'clock Central Time in the SEC title game. We'll have some last news and notes before we wrap it up right after this.
Together, we are partners, setting a new standard for health. Together, we prove that no matter how battle-tested we are, our spirit remains undefeated. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU are creating transformational change and impacting Louisiana with a new standard for healthcare, research, and education. Together, Our Lady of the Lake and LSU are champions for Louisiana. Together, we roar. Learn more at ololrmc.com/LSU.
Play our lucky numbers with 7-11-21. Win up to $2,100. Winnings with a twist. Play the new Fruit Twist Scratch-Offs. Win up to $12,000. Twist and count your winnings today. Must be at least 21 to purchase.
Never miss a minute of the conversation by downloading the free 104.5 ESPN mobile app, powered by Bayou Ford. Listen live. Download what you missed on demand. Find exclusive podcasts from the Guarantee Podcast Network. Connect with us on social media and even set an alarm to wake up to Off the Bench. The best part is it's a free download and available for Apple and Android devices. Plug in, sync up, and download the 104.5 ESPN mobile app powered by Bayou Ford.
Hi, I'm Thomas Hawkins. I'm a certified technician at Mr. Electric Baton Rouge, and we want you to work on our team. At Mr. Electric, you don't just work amongst fellow expert electricians, you learn from them too. We share expertise and make each other better every day. That plus a competitive salary, amazing benefits, and the chance to work with a brand with over 23 years of excellence makes working at Mr. Electric a great career move.
Visit MrElectric.com to schedule your appointment today.
This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, delivered by ASAP.
Once again, the Tigers enter the SEC title game coming up this Saturday afternoon from Atlanta. 7th appearance for the Fighting Tigers in the SEC title game, and they'll take on the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll get the day started at 1 o'clock with LSU game day, and then kickoff coming your way just after 3 p.m. A little quick reminder, we have the premiere of the Matt McMahon Show coming up tonight here on the network, talking LSU Fighting Tiger basketball from TJ Ribbs at 7 o'clock. Then later in the week, Brian Kelly will be on hand at TJ Ribbs for the Brian Kelly Show. That one, once again, coming at 7 o'clock. That'll wrap things up today. Thanks to Gordy Rush. Thanks to you. We'll be back next time on the Brian Kelly Press Conference, delivered by ASAP.
This has been the Brian Kelly Press Conference, delivered by ASAP, the official mobile ordering partner of LSU Athletics. Download the ASAP app today.
Anytime. A daily look at sports from our resident historian. Your sports break during your lunch break. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. Here's Charles Sandegriff.
And we welcome you back in here to Hanny Time 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly, the biggest news out of the press conference was the updates on the injuries. And it was mostly positive. where Jarek Bernard Converse, Jaden Daniels, and Josh Williams were concerned. Brian Kelly said he expects all of them back at practice. He expects that all of them will be good to go this weekend, but he stopped short of guaranteeing it. So you got to, and that's the way you're supposed to do this. He's got to err a little bit on the side of caution. You can't just, you come out and you say, oh, yeah, everybody's going to play. Might work well for deception, but he said basically, yeah, we think, but, Got to wait and see. For instance, Jaden Daniels has got to do an examination where he's got to be able to get up on his toes. Well, okay, then let's see. Hopefully, all of those things will be good. But that was the biggest hard news that came out of the press conference. Kelly talked a little bit about the season and some of the things that they've accomplished and being able to play in the SEC championship game. If for 1 second you're an LSU fan and you're thinking, okay, it's just a trip to the SEC championship game, probably not going to win, big underdog, but ahead of schedule, so happy with the program, happy with the season, but the trip to the SEC championship game, since they're probably going to lose, not as excited about it. Think about the parade they would be throwing in Oxford, Mississippi, if Ole Miss was going to the championship game. They haven't been since they instituted the championship game. A&M's feeling pretty good about this win. They're not feeling real good about their season, and they would be throwing a parade if they were going to the SEC championship game for the first time in Starkville, where they had a very good season at 8-4, and certainly capped it off with an Egg Bowl win that will keep their fans happy. Would be throwing a parade if they were going to the SEC championship game for the first time since, help me out here, 1998, maybe. Is that right? I'm thinking 2008. Is that right? I'm sorry, 1998. If Arkansas were going to the SEC championship game for the first time since, I think, 2002, they would be throwing a parade up there. Similar parades if they were if they had a berth in Columbia, South Carolina, or Lexington, Kentucky, or Columbia, Missouri, or, well, I almost said Nashville, but, hey, look, I don't want to make fun of Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is just fine by me. They won more than 2 games this year. That was good, and they beat Florida. So I'm not I ain't picking on Vandy today. The point being that when he was asked a question about what winning the SEC, he says it's just hard. Sure. It's hard to get by just the Western Division. Ole Miss is 0 for 30 doing this. Mississippi State's been, I think, once. Arkansas has been twice in the history of the game, going back to 1992. I mean, Alabama, LSU, and Auburn have owned this space, mostly Alabama. So don't take this for 1 second. Don't downplay the fact that they got into the SEC championship game. And so I can't believe I have to say it. It's a really, really, really big deal. It would have been perfectly acceptable if they had gone 6-2, and instead of a win against Alabama and a loss against Texas A&M, it had been the other way around. And because of that, Alabama would have owned the tiebreaker and gone to Atlanta. This still would have been considered a successful season. Once they beat Alabama and got to 5-1 in the league, this was going to be considered a very much ahead of schedule, successful season. So they win big, they win small, they lose big, they lose small. This has still been a successful season. Don't put any kind of damper on an SEC Western Division championship because they're hard to come by. Alabama is really, really hard to beat. Still shouldn't be in the playoff, by the way. USC loses, and Ohio State should go in front of Alabama. They've got one less loss. Their best win is better than Alabama's best win. Their win against Penn State is better than anything Alabama's got win-wise on the resume. Their one loss is better. team they lost to is better than either of the teams that Alabama lost to. Sorry, but Michigan's better than Tennessee, and they're better than LSU. Proved that on Saturday. So you've got a better win. You've got a better loss. You've got one less loss. I don't see how, and neither one of these teams is going to play this weekend. So if Alabama is ahead of Ohio State when the rankings are announced tomorrow, I'm not going to take it very well. Okay, just let you know ahead of time. Some of the other things that it went on in college football this weekend. The Egg Bowl, we talked a little bit on Friday, but on Friday night, Florida beat Florida State 45-38. The Gators played a much better game than they did the week before, obviously. But you look at, since we spent a little bit of time talking about Napier, not pushing Napier, just talking about Billy Napier. LSU and Florida, two great jobs in the SEC. They both came open. LSU hired Brian Kelly. Florida hired Billy Napier. Billy Napier and Florida went 6-6 this year. They went 3-5 in the SEC. They were 1-4 against ranked teams. Their non-conference schedule was better than LSU's. They had one common opponent. They both played Florida State. They both lost to Florida State. Utah is better than anybody else that was on LSU's non-conference schedule. So the Gators played a little bit more difficult to schedule, but they won 3 fewer games. And they only beat one ranked opponent, that was Utah, in the opener, and they were 3-5 in the SEC. If Brian Kelly had had that season, it would not have come as a galloping shock. It would have, a lot of people would have said, well, yeah, that's kind of where we expect them. Vegas didn't have them much ahead of that. So for all of the Kelly versus Napier stuff, which I never bought into, I never thought it was an either or with those two. Kelly got the better resume. That's not even up for debate. The first season, did Napier inherit a better situation at Florida than Brian Kelly did at LSU? Pound for pound, I would say he did. He certainly inherited more scholarship players. I'm talking about just the current squad, not the overall state of the program, facilities, resource, and all that stuff. Florida's a great job, top 5 job. But just this team, the day he walked into the offices in Gainesville and the day Kelly walked into the offices in Baton Rouge, who had the better roster? I would strongly argue that Billy Napier did, and finished 3 games below what Kelly did. So that was the kind of season that a lot of people thought LSU would have. Florida finishing 6-6. Tulane, huge win for that program on Friday against Cincinnati. Well, Willie Fritz has done there. We talk about jobs that ain't easy. This is going to be Tulane. They play Central Florida this Saturday for the American Championship. It'll be only the second time in 73 years if they win the conference title. They won a conference title in 1998 with Sean King. That was in Coosa. If they win this one, it'll only be their second one going back to the 1940s. Is that a hard job? Yes. Going to Cincinnati, is that a tough thing? Yeah, it is. Although we found out later on about Luke Fickell, but that's just an unbelievable season. Anyway, you want to shake it. Let's talk about what the jobs this weekend that were filled. I thought that Nebraska's hire of Matt Rule was fantastic. That's, if I had been Auburn, that's probably who I would have spotlighted. Tried to put him in place as my head coach. What Matt Rule did at Baylor was very, very impressive under extremely difficult circumstances. But what he did at Temple was a miracle. A miracle. Here's a good one for you. Matt Rule, when he beat a ranked team, and I'm blanking on which team it was. He beat an AP ranked team when he was at Temple, the last one that he beat. That's more recently than Nebraska has beaten an AP top 25 team. That was 3 jobs ago, okay? And it's still more recent than Nebraska. That stat blew my mind when I read it earlier today. I think it's a fantastic hire for Nebraska. How good will he be? How good can that program be? I don't know anymore. Back in the 90s, it was the gold standard. Now, Does it have a ceiling that is considerably lower than that? Probably so. But I don't know how much better they could do resume-wise than Matt Rule. Wisconsin going out to get Luke Fickell, who it appeared was content to stay at Cincinnati long-term unless maybe the job at Michigan or Ohio State or Notre Dame were to open up. Wisconsin to get him out of, and now especially since they are headed to the Big 12, to get him out of there is a tremendous job by Wisconsin. That is a very good job if certain people, we won't mention any names, Barry Alvarez, lets him do his job and kind of, stays in the background a little bit. That was a tremendous hire. If you're an Auburn fan today, you're like, hey, Nebraska fired their coach 2 months ago. They were ready to pounce the day of the day after the last game. Wisconsin fired their guy about 5 weeks ago, and Wisconsin had two ready-made candidates that had ties to the program, and Jim Leonard, who was already there as the interim coach, and Lance Leipold at Kansas, who had spent a large portion of his career at Wisconsin Whitewater and had won multiple Division III national championships. Instead, they go out and they get the guy that, frankly, a lot of people wanted last year, and he was like, nope, I'm good. Two good hires there. And so who does Auburn turn to next? If Freeze is indeed off the board, or, there's rumors swirling around this morning, and when aren't there rumors around the Auburn coaching job, but that Freeze's candidacy may not quite be 100% dead. Don't know. We'll see. Do we finally take TCU seriously? And by seriously, I mean, are they in the playoff no matter what? Even if they were to lose to Kansas State this weekend, and of all of the championship games, that's the one that people think Vegas thinks will be the most competitive. The last time those two teams played, it was a fantastic ball game. Kansas State was ahead 28-10 and got outscored 28-0 the rest of the game to lose 38-28. But it was a very good game. They'll have to beat them again. But while there may not be outside of TCU a top 10 team, top 15 team in the Big 12, there's a lot of good teams. There was no the bottom feeders even were competitive most of the season. It was a win against teams that were ranked when TCU played them, but faded the rest of the season. Teams like Oklahoma, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. Those were all top 20 teams when TCU played them. And while they played a lot of close games, there's something to be said for winning them all. And TCU has put themselves in a position where, win or lose, they could be in the college football playoff. Sonny Dykes is, in my opinion, the National Coach of the Year, and there's plenty of good candidates. Lincoln Riley has got USC on the verge of the playoff and a Pac-12 championship. And if you look at the odds this morning, probably the Heisman Trophy winner. Caleb Williams the last 2 weeks has been the best player in the country. And if you watched some of that game against Notre Dame, and I know a lot of people had an eye on it because of LSU's potential playoff ramifications, there were some spots that he got out of that just didn't seem like anybody could have, except for Jordan Travis on that one run on Friday night for Florida State. That was ridiculous. So Lincoln Riley, strong candidate. Lance Leipold had a really nice, strong start at Kansas. You got to think, hey, it's Kansas. Brian Kelly and Josh Heupel in the SEC both had, fantastic seasons. Jim Harbaugh's undefeated up at Michigan, but Sonny Dykes, that was a 5-7 team a year ago. You go from 5-7, and we're not talking about at an absolute powerhouse. We're talking about a good program that, with the right coach in place, can be successful. But you don't expect them. It's not like they're guaranteed a spot in a New Year's Six Bowl every year. That was very impressive what they did to Iowa State. Alabama, with their win against Auburn, has set themselves up for a New Year's Six Bowl. The word out of Tuscaloosa is they're asking if Bryce Young will play in the bowl game. I'll be honest with you. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. Listening to him after the game, I believe him when he says, "Hey, listen, these are my guys, and I want to be with them, and I want to play." If you're an agent talking to him, I can understand why you'd want to talk him out of it. Bryce Young has put enough good film on tape. Going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, maybe the top pick in the draft, depending on who gets it. And an agent would tell him, listen, you've done everything you can do at Alabama. You're not going to win a national championship. You've already won the Heisman. Hang up your cleats and wait for the draft. But I'll bet he doesn't. I'll bet Bryce Young plays. One of the more shocking outcomes of the weekend was South Carolina going to Clemson and winning that game by 1 point. I said on Friday, I said, look, if Spencer Rattler can duplicate half of what he did against Tennessee, I'll be shocked. Well, Spencer Rattler threw for 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. Good for him. Congratulations. He did throw 2 interceptions that were very costly, and they won anyway. 1 pick six and another interception in the end zone, and they still won the game. DJ Ungalele, I'm sorry, incredibly overrated as the number 1 player coming out. It's not that he doesn't have any talent at all, but in most of the big games, that game against Notre Dame when he subbed for Trevor Lawrence looks like a little bit of fool's gold. He's a good player. He is not a great player, in my opinion. Clemson finishes up at 10-2, and if everything falls right, this is not out of the realm of possibility that LSU could see them in a bowl game. Now, LSU would have to win on Saturday, which is, they're a big underdog, but it could happen. I could save this for no class on Wednesday, but since we've already done it, I'll just leave this here. Oregon against Washington had 4th and 1 late in the game on their own 29-yard line. Went for it, missed. Washington got the ball. Washington won the game. So against Oregon State in the 4th quarter, in his own territory at the 29-yard line in a 4th down and 1, Dan Lanning in Oregon went for it, missed. Oregon got a short field, scored, won the game. Have you learned nothing? Look, going for it on 4th and 1, deep in your own territory is an act of desperation at times in those games where he didn't need to be desperate. And he ran a banged-up Bo Nix on the play, who was stopped. Oregon had the special teams problems killed Oregon in that game in the 4th quarter, which they went to the 4th quarter up 31-17. And then they got up 34-17 early in the 4th quarter, and Oregon State looked dead, but they got a touchdown drive. They got a 3-and-out. Punter drops the ball at the 2-yard line. Oregon State recovers it, punches it in. Then the 4th down. Oregon State gets the ball back. They score again, 21 unanswered in the 4th quarter to knock the Ducks out in Corvallis. Tennessee had their big win over Vanderbilt. Look, give Vandy credit. 5 games this year is twice as many as they were supposed to win. Nice job by Clark Lee and that group. But Tennessee, far the better, even without Hendon Hooker on Saturday. And that's what happened in the top 10. One of the more entertaining games, we watched it all the way through the postgame, was Washington and Washington State, the Apple Cup. Boy, you want to talk about they just traded haymakers for 3 quarters, and then Michael Penix in Washington took over in the 4th quarter. Penix is going to end the regular season as the leading passer in the country in terms of yards per game. He threw for 485 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Washington finishes the season at 10-2. They had a strange season because coming out of September when they were undefeated, I looked at the schedule and said, man, they could get to November undefeated. And then they lost at the Rose Bowl, which, okay, that's a good UCLA team. But the loss to Arizona State was the one that did them in. Otherwise, you'd be talking about Washington as potentially coming out of the Pac-12 and being in the championship game and potentially getting into the playoffs. So those are some of the highlights of the weekend in college football. We'll take some of your questions out of the chat. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
Hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoyed it with some supreme rice. We'll get the rice dressing going at my house, man. We don't have Thanksgiving without rice dressing. So when you are planning for your holiday parties, and there are going to be a lot of them coming up, you're making a gumbo, you're making an etouffee, you're making or red beans, whatever it is that you want to make with rice, make it with Supreme Rice and support our Louisiana farmers down in Crowley, Louisiana and Southwest Louisiana since the 1930s. All of our Supreme Rice is grown, milled, and processed down in Southwest Louisiana. So whether it's the brown, the long grain, the medium grain, or the jasmine, make Supreme Rice a staple at your next gathering, especially if it's here during the holidays. You can pick it up at all your AG food stores, all of your Walmarts, all of your Rouse's, all of your Winn-Dixies, and of course, you're going to stretch your food dollar with Supreme Rice. For more information, some unique recipes, go to the website at supremerice.com.
Professional golfers John Peterson and JJ Colleen answer all your golf and life questions inside the new Drop Biscuit Studios podcast for the people. Download or subscribe today at dropbiscuit.com.
There it is, the extra mile. On the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Louisiana. It's a place defined by culture, by pride, by passion, by people who do more than love this place. They celebrate it, elevate it, champion it. They are the individuals who embody what makes Louisiana great. The companies that make Louisiana a better place to work and live. The nonprofits leading transformational change in our communities. Champions of Louisiana are all around us, and LWCC is proud to celebrate them because we've always been Louisiana loyal, supporting the workers, the innovators, the change agents of this great place we call home. Who are the champions around you? Together, we can share their stories. Together, we can help our home state thrive. Together, we are Louisiana loyal. Always.
Eli's always been into grilling. It took us a while to see it, but the signs were there.
What are you doing, Eli?
I knew grilling was my thing. I have been talking about it throughout my career.
Happy with the results?
I am. Got the new grill from barbecueguys.com. It performed great.
My advice, as I always told my boys,
do more of what you're born to do.
Barbecue Guys, for those who were born to grill.
You want cheese on your burger, Pops?
I'll take a little cheese.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast.
Hey, it's Hunt Palmer. Join me Monday, 1 to 3 on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge, reacting to LSU and Texas A&M, as well as the Saints and Niners. Hunt and Hill, 1 to 3 weekdays, 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Congratulations to Joseph Corson of Baton Rouge. Joseph is our Week 13 winner in the 2022 Twin Peaks College Football Pick'em Contest, and he wins a $50 Twin Peaks gift card. Thank you to everybody for participating in the 2022 Twin Peaks College Football Pick'em with Twin Peaks and 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
All right, some questions out of the chat. Ask Kenny, has Brian Kelly ever beaten Jimbo Fisher? I looked back. I think this makes Kelly 0-3 against Fisher. They played them twice at Florida State when Kelly was at Notre Dame. One of those was in the 2016 season, I think. No, I'm sorry, the 2014 season. They beat them. Florida State beat Notre Dame, and then they played them in a bowl game back in 2012, the Champs Sports Bowl, and Florida State won that game 18-14, and then Saturday. So if I'm missing one, somebody pick me up. But I think those three are it. And Fisher's won. Fisher's won all three of them. I think this was the biggest underdog though that Fisher has been in any of those. I would imagine that. It is. Ask Hanny, are you blocked by Hal? No, I'm not. Well, not to my knowledge. I'm not blocked by Hal. That's you guys feuding in the chat a little bit. Ask Hanny, what did you think of Hunt Palmer's Texas A&M yell leader? I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't hear it live, but somebody sent it to me later in the day. I laughed really, really hard, okay? Because we know Hunt's overwhelming just disdain for the program. And the cheerleader parodies, people making fun of them have gone on all year. They've spoofed them every way you can spoof them. But Hunt was really, really funny. And I don't think it had anything to do with them losing the game. But Mario, what'd you think? You were in here for that?
I was not. I did see it. I did listen to it live. It was hilarious. A little less funny after we lost the game, but still funny nonetheless.
We don't believe in the jinxing, right?
No.
I'll let Hunt explain himself. He'll be in here in a few minutes. Ask Hanny, why couldn't LSU stop A&M's run game? First of all, A-Chain coming back from a couple of weeks out looked fresh. We thought that he might be a little bit compromised. We saw him kind of limping around. Gordy, we talked about this on the podcast. Podcast is posted with the review of the A&M game. The player, A-Chain, was actually limping around, Gordy said, in part of pregame and even in between, and Gordy was on the sideline, so he saw him. So give that cat credit. He obviously was hurt. Everybody's hurting. It's week 12, okay? The human body's not meant to take this kind of punishment. So what do they call it? The 80-100? If you're 80% at this point in the year, you're really 100%. So give A-Chain credit. He's a terrific player. The line also had their best game. I would ask the question, and there's no way to really answer this, I think, except for the players themselves. And I don't think they would obviously never say anything publicly about it. I do wonder if this LSU front is maybe finally starting to show some signs of fatigue. Could be nothing. Could be a one-off. But they have not been run on that way really all year. You go back to the Florida State game, and Travis gave them some problems on third down for sure, but it wasn't like Florida piled up. Florida State piled up. They didn't have a back go for 200 yards. Over the last, I would say, 8 weeks since they stopped play, they got into conference play for real after the first 3 non-conference games were done. The first 4 on that defensive line have played, I would say, somewhere in the area of 80 to 90% of the snaps. And Jaquilin Roy had a terrific game on Saturday. I mean, 12 tackles for an interior defensive lineman, that's a haul. But when Mason Smith went out, it robbed them of a lot of depth because Smith would have been a starter and Mekhi Wingo would have been able to spell those guys, and you would have been able to mix in a little bit of Jacoby and Guillory. Right now, I would say that Wingo and Roy have probably played in excess of 90% of the snaps over the last 8 weeks. Maybe not. Maybe they got them out. I don't remember in a UAB game. But let's say the significant snaps with the game, are they a little bit worn down? The condition of this team has not been in question, and I'm certainly not questioning that now, other than they've been forced into more action than I think that Brian Kelly would like. if Kelly had his druthers and he had all the depth that he wanted on this team, your defensive tackles would probably be playing about, your starting defensive tackles would probably be playing about 60%, maybe 65% of the snaps. They've probably been up at 85, maybe even a little bit higher than that. That'd be a good project for somebody besides me to go and chart all those plays to see exactly how many they have played. Ask Annie, what's the best Thanksgiving side dish that you had? So I got to give my mother-in-law credit. She cooked just about everything in the meal. We brought a dish, and my wife's aunt brought a dish, and my mother-in-law cooked everything else. And she knows I like green peas, and she went out of her way to go and try to make it exactly like we like it. And she knocked it out of the park. So this particular, ordinarily for me, it's cornbread dressing. I love cornbread dressing. I love rice dressing. But the side dish, she knocked it out of the park. And Tracy's aunt also made a salted caramel bread pudding, which is every bit as good as it sounds. So thanks to them. That was pretty good. Mother-in-law, when did Hanny get married? About 10 years ago. A little bit late to the little bit late on that. No problem. Thanks to everybody for participating. Tomorrow, Dwayne Colucci joins us from out in Las Vegas as we'll set up championship week. Also, tomorrow we'll have more from Brian Kelly and Kirby Smart. We'll see what Smart's got to say in his Monday presser. And listen, if I get real brave, we'll get a little bit deeper in on the Saints. Man, that's ugly. For Taylor and Mario, I'm Charles Hanniger saying thank you and good afternoon. Stay tuned for the Hunt Palmer Variety Show, singing, dancing, and lots of sports talk. That is next. This is Hanny Time 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
So many business owners having problems with staffing. Listen, the amount of time it takes to staff, the interviews, the background checks, the screening, the payroll expenses. Listen, it is a real pain and it's frustrating. So many of your interviews are no-shows. You get people that aren't qualified. You have to go through all of that background information, and you may not even get the employee that you want. Let Tiger Labor and Staffing handle all of this, the interview process and the onboarding. Your screening and your training is taken care of by Tiger Labor and Staffing. If you need somebody temporarily, a day, a week, or a month, they'll help you lower your labor expenses and increase your flexibility. If you need some seasonal employees here during the holidays, they can help you with that. The risk for the temp to hire option of only 60 days is the lowest in the industry. Tiger Labor and Staffing welcoming skilled and unskilled labor. If you're looking for a job, they'll match you with one that fits. Quick turnarounds on pay. Tiger Labor and Staffing. Go to tigerlabor.com.
As a community bank, B1 Bank